Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49 and it begins right now. Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the American Idiot Show. I am one of your hosts, Money Mike. Of course, going to be joined by my co-host, Manic Hispanic, here for too long. And our third member of our panel here is going to be on a little bit of a vacation, so he will be joining us as he can. But, of course, definitely want to remind you guys, if you do enjoy the podcast, go ahead and give us a like. Share the page, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell along with subscribing. And if you're listening to our audio-only version, go ahead and hit the subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes. What's up, David? How are you doing tonight? With that being said, we got a lot to get to. Of course, we took last week off due to some scheduling issues that came up at the last moment. But we do have quite a bit that hasn't really changed too much, so we'll try to cover both weeks as we get into it. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and bring on my co-host, Manny Hispanic. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. It's funny that you say he's going to be on a little vacation. He's playing church league volleyball.
Oh.
They scheduled their games on Monday nights, so that's what he's doing.
He done sold us out for volleyball?
Yes, that's why I said have fun playing your games.
You know what? That's white privilege for you. That's white privilege for you.
Yeah, that tennis elbow and that volleyball knee. I don't know.
There you go.
That's white problems.
Oh, how was your Thanksgiving, Manny?
Thanksgiving was really good. We went through a whole bunch of mess to get the Cowboys game because CBS has pulled their channel from Dish Network, which really sucks. But what really gets me is that if you put up an antenna, you can get the channel for free. So why are you trying to hold up Dish Network for more money?
Yeah, I mean, I can agree. It's the same situation. Like, I'm honestly considering just cutting my cable bill out, period. Because now I know that I can have ESPN, the ESPN app, and get all the Razorback games. I can have Paramount Plus and watch all of the CBS games live. The need for cable is drastically going down very quickly.
It is. The only reason I haven't really done that far is because with the variety of shows that we watch, you're looking at having to do a whole bunch of streaming apps.
Oh yeah, trust me, I got all
once, of them. So once you start doing that, you're paying just as much as you would have for cable anyways.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, luckily I got Peacock with no ads, so that's about $5. Otherwise it would be free with my cable subscription. Then so yeah, I mean, they definitely add up. I'd say probably. Yeah,
we got the Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. That's what, $13. Of course, by the time taxes, it's closer to 17.
14 roughly.
We've got the Amazon Prime.
Now I don't have Prime. How is that?
It's been pretty good. The only thing that I've really watched on it, honestly, has been House.
Okay.
I've never seen House before, and my wife said that I would like it because he's a sarcastic person who always seems to be right, and she thought I'd really relate to it.
Oh, I absolutely love Dr. House. Yeah, I think actually it is on Hulu as well. I could be wrong on
that. It is not.
It is not.
I,
Okay. I thought
I
there was.
couldn't find it on there. That's why we put the Amazon Prime. My wife had Amazon Prime anyways because of shipping and stuff.
Right.
But I mean, that was just kind of a bonus whenever that happened. But what people got to remember is when doing this, you also have to include the cost of your internet bill
Mm-hmm.
in that, and a lot of people don't look at that.
Oh, yeah.
You also have to look at the possibility of going over whatever minutes you have or whatever size package you have.
Yeah,
So
that's what people don't understand. Used to it was the Wild West. You could stream and do as much as you wanted to on internet. Now they cut you off. I just now had to add $10 to my Xfinity bill a month so I
right.
could get the unlimited internet so that we could stream and all of that good stuff. So definitely something people need to be aware of. Okay, let's get into this. So let's start off with our big one. Rittenhouse obviously found not guilty about 2 weeks ago. Arbery, last Friday, late breaking, it came out that those three were found guilty. And actually, I don't know if you saw this yet, but I got a little notification on my phone. Federal prosecutors prosecutors in Philadelphia are asking federal courts to re-prosecute, Bill Cosby to get him back into prison. So definitely something to keep your eye on. But we're going to go ahead and look at this wrap up of the Arbery trial from NBC News.
I'm going to go ahead and address each one of these verdict forms separately. First verdict form I have is the state of Georgia versus Travis McMichael. Mr. McMichael, please stand. Verdict is as follows. In the Superior Court of Glenn County, state of Georgia, the state of Georgia versus Travis McMichael, case number CR 000433. Jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. I'm going to ask that whoever just made an outburst be removed from the court, please. As this court has indicated, I ask that there be no outbursts in the court, and I expect as much from the gallery. Please respect the court's desire for this as we move forward. If you feel like you need to make a comment or otherwise demonstrate with respect to the verdict, I do ask that you step out of the courtroom now. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 7, aggravated assault. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 8, false imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. Dated this 24th day of November, 2021, signed by the foreperson.
Okay, so there you heard the verdict as it was read to one of the gentlemen that was found obviously guilty. I believe there was 3 in all that were found guilty and convicted of that heinous crime. So, Manny, what I've heard over the last 5 days or 4 days, since this is a lot of comparison and contrasting between Rittenhouse and the Arbery trial. I don't think that there's a comparison between the two. And I'll say this much. Rittenhouse, the prosecutor, did a terrible job of proving, and he had an uphill climb. I'll admit he did have an uphill climb, but he did a terrible job of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Kyle Rittenhouse meant to kill those individuals or killed them with any sort of cold blood. Even in talking with one of my associates this weekend, Friday night, going to dinner, I was talking to him, and he was like, I don't think he killed them in cold blood. Let's start there. Do you think there's any comparison? I've heard some people on the right saying that, oh, well, they just traded Rittenhouse for now they got Arbery. Like, I've heard that a couple times floated. What do you think there is any comparison between the two situations?
No, I really don't think there's any comparison. What we have is, in my opinion, prosecutors who tried to hang charges on Rittenhouse that really weren't charges he should have been charged with.
Right.
You get him under a manslaughter or a something to do with accidental murder. You come back with a guilty. I'm willing to believe. But you get him on capital murder or murder one. What were the charges?
Hold on. I know one was hold on. So first degree intentional homicide, attempted first degree intentional homicide, first degree reckless homicide. Let me get rid of this ad. First degree recklessly endangering safety, and first degree recklessly endangering safety. Two of those, I could probably see that they should have been guilty. And those, obviously, the two, the endangering safety. I'll get into that in just a moment, but I'll let you continue your point.
I'm honestly surprised that he wasn't found guilty with the reckless homicide, because his actions did ultimately result in the deaths.
Exactly.
I think where he kind of got away with it was the fact that at the point he actually pulled the trigger, he was being attacked.
Absolutely.
And that is the difference right there. With the Arbery case, these guys followed a man. It doesn't matter where he was coming from. It doesn't matter where he was going to. It is a man in shorts and a T-shirt. He obviously does not have anything on him. The fact that they were saying that they didn't know if he had been doing anything, they just saw him around a construction site, tells me right there you really have nothing.
Exactly. I agree.
So
I absolutely agree.
So people coming at you with guns, yeah, I think I'm running too.
Right. Absolutely. So I've been kind of racking my brain, because obviously I don't think the two mix and match as well as people want to compare them. I compare Rittenhouse, and I've thought about this. I compare Rittenhouse a lot to Zimmerman, the gentleman who killed Trayvon Martin in Florida. And the reason why I say that, and I've gotten the same look quite a few times, the reason why I compare the two, Rittenhouse was in a spot, look, and in my mind, this is just my thought process here. Rittenhouse went looking for trouble. Trouble found Rittenhouse, and Rittenhouse killed a man. Same as Floyd. Floyd followed Trayvon home, harassed him, and then
Zimmerman, not Floyd.
Excuse me. Zimmerman turned around and Trayvon turned around, proceeded to whoop his ass, and Zimmerman killed him. And here's the scary part for me. I don't believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe Rittenhouse is taking this seriously. And the reason why I say that is what has happened since the verdict. He's been on all the news sites. I've seen headlines like Rittenhouse warns Biden. Like, if I'm Kyle Rittenhouse and I know what just happened and how close I came to spending the rest of my life in prison, I'm probably going somewhere and disappearing off the face of the earth. Like, nobody will know who I am, what I'm doing, nothing, because I don't want any of that trouble. But he's kind of leaning into it, almost like Zimmerman, where you hear of him like signing bags of Skittles and stuff. Like,
Is he leaning into it, or is he being pulled into it? You got to remember, he is still a young man. How old is he? 17?
Did he turn 18 in the time since?
I don't know.
Hold on. He is still 17.
Okay. He's a 17-year-old man, so his rationale is not quite there. You have news agencies and organizations that want these stories out there, so of course they're going to be throwing money to try to get him to interview.
Right.
You've got parents that probably don't mind the money being thrown their direction. And then you have news agencies who we know don't mind drumming up a crazy headline just to make ratings.
Very, very good point. And, you know, the thing is, the gentleman, obviously, he's 17 years old. He's a kid. It's just, it speaks a lot to me. What do you make of, and maybe you have a different mindset of what this is. I think the thing that worries me most is he's almost looked at as like a cult hero for Cult 45, basically. You know, the guy is being, you know, bandied about like a guy who stood up against the law and won and what have you. You know, no, unfortunately, he was just overcharged.
Right.
And he got away with some things he shouldn't have. He got the weapons charge, I found out, was literally a small technicality loophole that they found. And that's why that got dismissed. But what do you make of him being kind of this cult hero? Like, honestly, this may be a stretch, but I wouldn't be surprised if Trump, you know, embraces this kid and, you know, uses him on the campaign trail should he decide to run in 2024, because there's a lot of crossover appeal.
If Trump does that, I will be sickened, honestly. That is I mean, Trump is old enough to know better. So if Trump pulls something like that, that would bother me. As far as him being a cult leader of sorts, I don't see that yet, because what are we saying? 5 days, 6 days?
Yeah. Well, no,
what was that? That was last Monday?
A little over a week.
So 7 days, 7 to 8 days. I honestly hadn't seen a lot about him on the news.
Okay.
The sites that I've gone through, the headlines that pop up on my computer, I hadn't seen a lot of one or two stories have popped up, but there was no big headlines like you were just talking about, and it hadn't been in great quantity. So
I'll have to go look it, because I know he's definitely, I'm pretty sure it's Tucker Carlson. I'm pretty sure, of course, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's Tucker Carlson he did a sit down with on Fox News. But I can't guarantee you any of the other ones that are completely standing out in my mind as to.
So I think that may show the difference in like our search histories, and what my computer wants to show me based on my search history, and what your computer wants to show you based on yours. If I'm thinking about it correctly, you are a little more Democrat leading all of a sudden, since Trump, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they could be pulling those stories to throw those headlines up to upset Democratic candidates and followers and that kind of stuff.
Good point. Very good point as far as that goes. And of course, without knowing anything, I did send you the story in the chat during that video. It popped back up. But actually, what's happening is prosecutors are asking U.S. Federal Court or the U.S. Supreme
Supreme
Court
Court.
to
Yeah,
review Bill Cosby's overturned conviction. So they're not looking to retry Cosby.
right. They just want to look
Double
over his paperwork, basically.
Right, right. Which I mean, so I kind of want to, without delving deep into the details of what's happened today, I kind of want to get into a question as far as like in overall justice in America. Used to back in the day, it wouldn't matter if you were old, blind, senile, shit yourself every day. You weren't getting out of prison if you committed a crime until you served your time or you passed away. What is it with this recently where these defense attorneys are able to argue, oh, my client, he's old and he can't see anymore and he's senile and we're being mean to him and we need to let him out of prison. Like, what is with that recently? Like, do you understand that movement all of a sudden? And I mean, Cosby got it. I mean, it's shocking, but that's where we are.
Right. No, honestly, I don't, because your people like Cosby, the nonviolent offenders seem to be the ones who stay in there the longest, so that these private prisons can get money from the states.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how many people that commit murder and are repeat offenders get bail and released, while non-violent offenders who happen to have a little bit of drugs on them get the book thrown at them and spend decades in prison.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. It is like they cater to the non-violent people, or they cater to the violent people to kind of get them out of the way, because the prisons don't want to deal with them in the prisons. But that's where they need to be, is in the prisons.
Absolutely. And another thing before we move on that you had sent in the chat, which I found very interesting, you sent a story from MSN that says Henry Ruggs is showing that it's wealth privilege, not white privilege, that plagues the criminal justice system here in our country.
Right. For those that don't remember, Henry Ruggs was my American Idiot 4 weeks ago, something like that. Yeah. He was the NFL wide receiver who drove his Corvette in excess of 150 miles an hour, rear-ending a Toyota, causing it to go into a light pole, catching fire and killing the driver and the driver's dog.
Absolutely.
Out of jail.
And the thing is with him, Henry was released on $150,000 bail. And that's what they're doing. They're arguing that it's not a class division. It's more of it's not a race division. It's more of a class division. Now, I ask you why it can't necessarily be both, because when you look at it, a majority of financially downtrodden individuals in this country are minorities. So I think it can be a little bit of both, but I think that this hits on something that we do forget, that there is a big difference. I mean, hell, look at OJ. OJ, if he would have been using a public defender, would have never fucking got off. But
True.
Luckily, he had Johnny Cochran money, and Johnny Cochran, got OJ Simpson off. Of
With
course,
a few raps, yes.
Argue that OJ didn't do it, but with that being said, Johnny Cochran successfully got OJ off. So do you believe it is a wealth thing? Do you believe it's a race thing? Or do you believe it's both?
I honestly do believe it is a class thing. Yes, your class, your wealth base is your class, and it is definitely a class thing in the United States. I think it has always been a class thing. You have some people of every race that has money, and those people are always treated differently. You look at people like John Leguizamo and Enrique Iglesias. You look at those people, Michael Jackson. You look at O.J. Simpson. There are a number of people that have money that do things that skirt the law, and they're kind of let go.
I would absolutely agree with you. Do you think Arbery, and we'll use Arbery here as an example of this? Do you think Arbery is a case that you could point to prove that, and that these gentlemen, even though they were white, they still got convicted? Or do you think that this was just an open shut case and they had really no choice?
I think this was an open and shut case. They really had no choice because I couldn't tell you where Arbery's class was. He obviously wasn't very wealthy.
Right.
Otherwise, that would have been plastered all over the news media.
Right.
These three guys that lived in this subdivision obviously wasn't very wealthy, or that would have been plastered all over. I guarantee you, if it was Bezos or somebody that had some money, they would definitely be talking about how much money they had.
Right. Absolutely.
So you have two middle class, two lower class sides that basically came together, and pretty much how you put it, once you look at all the evidence, it is an open and shut case, period.
So before we move on, and we have another, the next topic is kind of about justice, but I want to ask you before we move on, $158,000 bail. He killed somebody. Number one, how do you feel about Henry Ruggs actually getting a bail set? I don't believe even OJ got a bail set. I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe OJ got bail. He got $158,000 bail too. That seems extremely, extremely low for somebody facing the charges he's going to be facing. And he was able to pay it. Do you think, what do you make of that? Do you think, again, that proves that it's a class situation? And I mean, I can't wrap my head around the amount and the fact that he was actually given the option to get bail.
Right. Well, it's a toss-up between looking at something as an accident and looking at something as intentional stupidity. He didn't set out to kill anybody, and I get that.
Right.
But he did make a decision when he got in the car to drive very ignorantly.
Right. Not only drunk, but
right.
You said 150 miles an hour?
It was over 150.
Right. In the middle of Las Vegas, mind you.
Right. So it's those kind of things that you start looking at. I guarantee you, if I would have gotten in my truck, and it ain't doing no 150, but if I was doing the 99 before the governor kicks in, like I know it can do, and I rear-ended somebody causing death, I'm not going to be getting out.
Right. You're not going to get a bail.
So I guarantee, I guarantee you, it does have to do with class.
Especially not some little $150,000 bail. Like, I saw that amount. I was like, are you kidding me? People in Arkansas I've seen with DWIs get higher bail than that. And it's just a straight DWI. Right.
They didn't have no accident. They didn't kill anybody. They just swerved over the line a little bit and couldn't pass the test.
Exactly. $118,000 bail. And they wow. Anyway, okay, so here's another one. 2 out of 3 men convicted for Malcolm X's assassination have been exonerated. And we have a story here from ABC News on this.
It has been more than half a century since the assassination of civil rights leader Malcolm X, but now the Manhattan District Attorney is moving to exonerate 2 of the men convicted in the killing of an icon. A new investigation found that the FBI and the NYPD withheld evidence that might have cleared the men. 55 years after they were convicted of killing Malcolm X in a case that has long been shrouded in controversy, 2 of the men found guilty in the civil rights leader's assassination are about to have their convictions thrown out by the Manhattan District Attorney. Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam were sentenced to life in prison, even though fellow Nation of Islam member and confessed killer Mujahid Abdul Halim, previously known as Thomas Hagen, denied their involvement. Today, lawyers for the two men are relieved by DA Cyrus Vance's decision, albeit a late one. What took so long?
There's no doubt at all that this was the right decision for the DA to make at this point in time, but it's just as clear that this should have happened a long time ago. It never should have happened in the first place.
Malcolm X, an icon and one of the most influential leaders in the Nation of Islam and African American community, was fatally shot on February 21, 1965, in front of his pregnant wife and 3 daughters at New York City's Audubon Ballroom as he was preparing to give a speech, just 1 week after he was firebombed out of his Queens home. He was only 39. A controversial figure, toward the end of his life, he broke away from the Nation of Islam and softened his stance on violence.
It has fallen apart, and but what it has done in falling apart, many of those extremely militant and dissatisfied black Americans are now free to participate into the full swing of the struggle that's going on in this country, and I think it will be inclined to step up the tempo.
After his murder, mourners lined the streets, stores closed. Leaders like Muhammad Ali, Dr. Martin Luther King, James Baldwin, all praising him.
But he was a kind of hero only because at least he had the courage to try to tell the truth.
I mean, this is a horrible act, and it changed our history. So the FBI knew, they had information about who did it. They had that information. They didn't act on it, and they were perfectly content to watch these 2 men go to prison.
But questions about a lack of evidence and withheld information always cast doubt on the convictions of Aziz and Islam. Last year, District Attorney Cyrus Vance reopened the investigation at the insistence of the Innocence Project and others, which was heightened after the release of Netflix's Who Killed Malcolm X. The docuseries renewed questions about what the FBI and NYPD might have withheld in the case.
Because the official count of who killed Malcolm X, it's not true.
Well, I have to ask, in perhaps the same vein as Malcolm X, when he asked the question, is this another case of the chickens coming home to roost?
Certainly it is, in the sense that the FBI is reaping what it has sown for many decades. The FBI lied, the NYPD lied, and the DA's office admitted that it also made false statements to the court.
They spent a combined 42 years in prison, some of those years in solitary confinement. Both men's personal lives destroyed and their youth wasted away. Aziz had 6 children when convicted, and Islam had 3. And the accusation that they had killed an icon followed them throughout their lives. Both men always maintained their innocence.
Our job, and all we really could do under these circumstances, was correct this miscarriage of justice.
For Mr. Aziz.
For Mr. Aziz.
And Mr. Islam.
And Mr. Islam.
Well, not for Mr. Islam.
Posthumously.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but the tragedy that we have to remember is that he went to his death fighting till his last breath to prove his innocence and believing that he would never be cleared of this horrific crime.
Aziz spent 20 years in prison before being paroled in 1985. Tonight, the 83-year-old saying in a statement, "The events that led to my exoneration should never have occurred. Those events were and are the result of a process that was corrupt to its core, one that is all too familiar, even in 2021. Those attorneys say that they would now like to see this case reopened in an investigation into who knew what and when with regard to the FBI and NYPD.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos.
So, Manny, this is a tough one. Because they eloquently pointed it out. 42 years. These men were young men when they first went in for a crime that obviously they didn't commit. And, Mr. Aziz made an even more poignant point in saying that these are all too similar to the issues we're still facing today. What's your thoughts on this? Knowing what's going on, knowing that Mr. Islam went to his grave, having to battle this, and it turns out he was right all along.
I think some of it has to do with the product of its time. This all happened in a time when people of color were looked down on, looked as less than. Mm-hmm. That That is a fact of this nation.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it is the defense's job to find the evidence to clear the person they're representing.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the prosecution's job. In fact, that's one of the things they do is try to find what are the things that will kind of make this look like it's not the case, so we can hide that to make the best case we can that this person should go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily fault the prosecution because prosecutors were doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not sure about the defense. What did they know? How hard did they try to find stuff? You know, were they white men that were defending these black men and really didn't care, so they didn't really dig?
Right.
That's a question I have.
That's a good
I would
point.
like to know that. What is the evidence that was there that could have exonerated these guys? The other thing is your officials who had evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Your FBI, your New York police, those are entities that are supposed to be looking for all information,
Right.
sharing all information. So the fact that those agencies were hiding information, that's an issue. That is a big issue. I would like to know what is going to be done about those people.
Absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. In my mind, if I'm looking at this as, you know, a person that's in an elected position, whether it be prosecutor or what have you, I'm looking to bring charges against these FBI agents and these NYPD policemen.
And it's great that one of them has been freed and both of their names have been cleared. But I won't consider there to be actual justice in this matter until the people that knowingly held information in one of those two agencies is at least standing trial, being asked.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. And, you know, again, Mr. Aziz quoted as saying, you know, these are problems that we still face in 2021 with the FBI and the NYPD. A lot of people really don't. Whether you're, you know, pro thin blue line or, you know, defund the police or what have you, on both extremes, most people really don't trust the feds. I mean, the FBI, their respect is in the toilet, and it just keeps piling on. So here's another thought. Is this not something that the Biden administration, I realize we have bigger problems, but something the Biden administration should look into and possibly look at reforming the whole FBI and CIA, you know, because of these reputations that these institutions have gotten over the years?
I'm going to say no, they're not going to do anything because right now everybody's considering it a win.
Right.
They got exonerated. Their names are cleared. Yay, we won.
And people will stop. Right.
Yep.
Makes sense. Very good point. And see, that's the thing, you know, it seems like in this country, you know, Arbery, for example, yes, they got justice, but what are these guys about to get sentenced to? That was my first thought, you know, and this type of story gives me pause on my next sentence. But the first time I think I actually said this, the first reaction I gave was, I believe, in the American Idiots chat room. And I said, you know, they're definitely needle candidates. And for those that don't know, what I meant by that is they're definitely guys who deserve the death penalty. But here's the thing. If you look at it, these guys were probably close, if not, and I don't know the exact chances they had of it, but these are guys who were probably looking at the death penalty. What would have happened if we would have killed these guys?
Right.
The death
penalty. It's cases like this that make you kind of back off of, you know, pushing for the death penalty so much.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to say that we probably get it right 17 of 18 times, but what about that one? I mean, right. you got to feel for that one. Real quick, though, before we move on to our next story, what do you think? Do you agree with Mr. Aziz? Is this still something that, let's say Malcolm X is alive in 2021 and this happens. Do you think this is still something that we would see today?
No, I don't. A lot of people are more mindful of the fellow Americans that are around. You have a lot of people in places that don't necessarily see color. You have judges that are more evenly handed instead of racist judges that used to sit on the benches.
Right.
You have defense attorneys that are willing to go and defend a person regardless of their color, where back in the 60s, that wasn't the case. That's why I pointed that out. Was the defense for those men honestly trying to find their innocence?
Absolutely. And a very good point. And something I want to keep my eye on going forward is if this does fall off, or if they do decide to continue moving forward with it. And of course, we'll also keep an eye on the movement on the Cosby situation, as it looks like that one's heading to a battle in the Supreme Court. I mean, my thing is this: the guy's guilty. He needs to be spending the rest of his life in prison, even if that means a week or a month. You can't get access to the best health care. You probably should have thought about that before you decided to drug Lord knows how many women and sexually assault them. So, that is what it is. Okay, the 13 Republicans who voted for the infrastructure bill, they're getting a lot of play here recently, and we do have a story from Fox News on them.
After the House passed the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, President Biden boasted about his spending spree. Take a listen.
Finally, Infrastructure Week. I'm so happy to say that. We did something that's long overdue, that long has been talked about in Washington, but never actually been done.
Infrastructure Week, but the bill only includes $110 billion going to actual infrastructure, roads, bridges, and other, quote, transformational projects. And get this, 13 Republicans voted for the massive bill. 6 members of the squad voted against it. All right, so this bill, $1.2 trillion. I remember when we first started talking about this bill, and everyone was like, whoa, that is a huge price tag. Not only that, it's not all infrastructure. There's some human infrastructure in there as well. So, Alicia, I'm going to bring this up because Joe sort of said you've been anchoring for a long time last segment. So I'm sure you were anchoring when President Obama passed the $800 billion, that's with a B, dollar stimulus package. So how do we compare those two numbers? Because at the time, people were like, wow, $800 billion, that's a lot of money. Now we're talking $1.2 trillion.
Yeah, we're really getting used to, and I've been anchoring since I was 15, remember, Joe? Just keep that.
Yes.
Keep that in your mind. But yeah, we're really getting used to, well, thank you. We're really getting used to some big numbers, and it's getting to be really frightening. I think it's going to be very interesting going into the midterms how all of this plays out, or even if folks remember, because maybe we'll be talking about even higher packages at some point. It's a little scary. But, Republicans really had a moment there while Democrats were really just beating the heck out of each other within their own party because they were dealing with this civil war. Now you have these 13 Republicans who've stirred up just a hornet's nest in their own party, and now you have this other fight where it really was a moment for them to come together and let Democrats just sort of like take care of things themselves, and they've been tripping over themselves, as we saw in the election night on Tuesday. So we'll continue to watch this. I do fear, Abby, that and I think a lot of Americans out there fear that these numbers will continue to go up as we become ever used to eye-popping numbers, which were once eye-popping and are no longer.
Well, you think that maybe this is what's happening with the Build Back Better plan. That's estimated to be $1.5 trillion. Well, it's said to be $1.75 trillion, but estimates say it could go up to $4 trillion. But I want to pick up what you said on those 13 Republicans. I think we have a full screen of who voted. Other full screen. Well, Yeah, the 13. Okay, so here are the 13 Republicans. We know that 6 far-left progressives voted against this. We kind of knew that was going to happen because a lot of them said we're not going to vote for infrastructure until we get this Build Back Better plan pushed through. So, Charlie, what do you say of the 13 Republicans who did vote for this bill while the 6 far-left progressives did not?
Well, sadly, I'm not terribly surprised that that they managed to pick up a handful of Republicans to go along with this. Anytime you put a room full of Democrats and a room full of Republican politicians in a room and they spend 6 months talking about spending trillions of dollars, one thing you can guarantee is that before the meeting is all over with, they're going to figure out how to spend at least $1 trillion. These people, it's like the last frontier of bipartisanship when it comes to politicians in Washington. But that's not to belittle or make light of what a serious issue this is. Of course, the biggest lie that anybody tells is this lie about how it's all paid for. It's not all paid for. Every dime of the $28 trillion that your children and your grandchildren will never live to pay off, every dime of that was paid for when Congress spent it. And we're just years away before we're going to hit a situation where it's going to suddenly be really difficult to make debt payments. It's going to be really difficult to pay our obligations on Social Security and things like this. So there will be a time, and it's not far away, when I think suddenly the American voter is going to start punishing politicians who blew through all of this money and spent like drunken sailors. I do think it's interesting, though, about the most honest thing that Joe Biden said was when he said that talked about how long overdue this infrastructure bill was. Yeah, it's long overdue in that for the past 5 years, Donald Trump was clamoring to spend this kind of money on real infrastructure, and Democrats refused to go along with it for the past 5 years because they didn't want to give him a win, and because they wanted to spend their time talking about all these crazy conspiracy theories that we now know are all lies and should have known at the time about Russia.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time left, but let's just throw up what's inside of that massive spending, social spending package. $555 billion tax credits for clean new energy. You can read them all there. We're waiting for the CBO score to tell us how much this bill will actually cost. But in the meantime, Joe, what are moderate Democrats and Republicans thinking about before the expected vote the week of November 15th?
Well, they're thinking about what's it going to cost, right? And that's why they're waiting for that CBO particular score that'll be out probably before Thanksgiving. But also, is there even a home for us anymore as far as our parties are concerned? But Dan Bongino had a great quote today. I actually stopped and rewound it on Fox and Friends. He said, quote, "Some Republicans on Capitol Hill are actually Democrats, but no Democrats on Capitol Hill are actually Republicans." Yeah, that about sums it up. And please, don't buy this argument, by the way, that Americans overwhelmingly want improvements to roads, bridges, and rail, and airports and power grids. Of course they do, but that's not what this is about. It's like buying a home, all right, this infrastructure bill, next to a toxic waste dump. Sure, the home is nice, but what you get with it ain't. And what you're going to get with it now, what this sets the road for, is that human infrastructure bill, right? And in this case, you're going to get a massive government expansion, trillions of more dollars spent at a time where core inflation's already at a 30-year high, gas prices are going through the roof, there's a supply chain shortage that we talked about at least through 2022, and all they had to do was vote against this and wait to win back the House and Senate in 12 months, which will happen given the president's poll numbers, and then tackle infrastructure the right way as a standalone bill with no pork and actual fixes and improving things. And of course, that didn't happen. I'll leave it here. Kevin McCarthy now is in serious trouble as House Minority Speaker. Pelosi delivered, McCarthy didn't, and that is your scoreboard right now.
No pork, but very expensive turkey as we come up on Thanksgiving.
So, Manny, obviously that a little bit dated there, but we're talking about the 13 Republicans who did indeed vote for infrastructure. The 13
before you really get into that, I just think whoever found that news story that really had nothing to do with this topic should be let go.
Sir, that was definitely the 13 Republicans who voted for the infrastructure bill. Go fuck yourself. We were also talking about the infrastructure bill. Anyway, with that being said, no, I think the more important thing that they kind of buried there were the 6 Democrats who refused to vote for the infrastructure bill. So
yes, that was a very telling sign right there.
Absolutely. Before we delve into before we delve into what's actually in the bill, and there is quite a bit in there that I do not think, while I think it will help Americans, I don't think it has any business being in an infrastructure bill.
Right.
Let's just start with the 6 Republicans or the 6 Democrats and the 13 Republicans. I think the bigger story here is the 6 Democrats who refused to vote, and they said that they refused to vote for it because they want Build Back Better. Build Back Better, I'm sorry, this is not going to become Obamacare, and you're not going to get this done easily, and it's going to get even harder here 365 days from today. Like the gentleman said, when I do right now, as it stands, believe the Republicans will take back both chambers of the Congress, and, it's just going to get harder. So why? Number one, what's your opinion of the 6 Democrats that are, the squad that are hinging their bets on this Build Back Better? Like, that's an uphill fight that they're trying to stop infrastructure that does desperately need to be passed from getting through. What's your thoughts on those 6?
One of the things with this squad is they have, from the beginning of their big break onto the scene, they have always been pushing for cleaner energy.
Right.
So the fact that we are looking at a bill that should have been really pushed towards that, the fact that they're not wanting to vote yes on that should tell everybody something.
Agreed.
And that was a perfect place for your Republican leaning news organizations to really put that out there, and they didn't.
Yeah, they buried the lead. Honestly, Fox News, I'm shocked, buried the lead that those 6 didn't vote for it. And here's the thing, these 13 Republicans are looked at as traitors. I kind of agree with the gentleman who said, you put a bunch of Republicans and Democrats in a room and tell them, hey, figure out how to spend $1 trillion. They're going to find out eventually how to spend $1 trillion at least.
Right.
I completely agree with him on that. So I don't look at the 13 Republicans as important as the 6 Democrats. Now let's kind of get into. Go ahead.
The 13 Republicans. The reason I'd even started with sharing that story on our page as a potential topic wasn't because these 13 Republicans voted for the infrastructure bill. It was because they were offered stuff to vote for the infrastructure bill. It wasn't about them saying, yeah, I'll vote that way. It's about what did they get for voting that way. They were paid off to do it.
Now it's been a while since I've read the story. Refresh my mind on this.
Every one of those people got something for their state, whether it was a big lump sum for roads or a big lump sum for bridges. It was infrastructure. But the fact is, they voted that way because they were promised goods.
Now let's look at that though, and I want to ask you: is that not politics though? Like you're going to
that is very much politics. Yes.
I mean, you're going to cut a deal. So again, I don't look at the Republicans as being wrong because I mean, hell, if I'm a senator for the state of Arkansas and somebody's like, hey, let's pass this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. There's some infrastructure in there, but hey, we'll make sure a lot of it goes to you. Oh, shit, hell yeah, I'm up for re-election in a year? Oh, yeah, that's going to bring jobs? Yeah.
Right, but you have to also see, and hopefully America sees, well, probably not because the news isn't going to report this.
Right.
But we're showing you that these are 13 Republicans that care more about money going to their state, which will probably get funneled into their pocket. I don't have any proof, but go figure.
It's politics. Come on.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who may not need to be reelected next time.
Their buddies are going to be the ones laying the asphalt on the for those bills. But no, let's get into the actual physical bill too. So you saw there's 2 things in there. The top 2 things that they showed, and they only showed what was actually in there on the first screen for just a half.
Before we get to that, another point I do want to make is you have these 13 Republicans that voted yes. to get paid off, regardless of what else it did to the country.
True, true. And
That's where I have the problem.
I often wonder with that, where do you go? So you have to represent. So like Tom Cotton, for example. Tom Cotton has got to balance the needs of the country along with the needs of the Arkansans. Where is that balance? I've often wondered that. Like, what takes precedent in your mind? If you're a senator from Arkansas, does the needs of the everyday Arkansan take precedent over the everyday American? Or how do you balance that? Because I would think that it's got to be at least a 50-50. If not, maybe you do kind of, because Arkansas is really the only one that can elect you. Maybe you do kind of lean towards Arkansas in there.
Right. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to these politicians who spend every dime they have so that when their budget comes up next time, they can write it for larger.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, for people that don't know this, I mean, I've been sitting there in the military before where they're like, oh shit, we got to spend this money or else we're going to get knocked down. And all of a sudden we get a bunch of shit. I mean, that we don't need to. It happens. And then 6 months later, you're looking for a pencil and they're like, oh, we don't have the budget for it. That's how these things work. But
so what's in the bill?
With that. I absolutely agree with that. Okay, so in the bill, the top two things that were mentioned were roads, bridges, overpasses, all that good stuff. And then the second one that I agree with was the one that was right underneath it. I have no problem with public transportation getting a little bit of additional funding.
Right, because that is definitely infrastructure.
I agree. And, public transportation is something that is important and greatly lacking in this country, honestly.
Well, the problem with it, in all honesty, is the fact that our cities have been changed to car-owning cities. Cities are planned based around driving a car.
Yeah.
Not based around riding a bus or riding a tram or even biking.
And
if our cities were designed properly, the shortest path would be to walk from your place to the grocery store, not to drive a car.
True. And I guess in that mindset, in that thought, they're catering towards the majority. Because I mean, let's be honest.
No, they're not. That's the problem, right? Really? That's the problem. They have changed all of these building laws. You have to have so much of a setback for residents. Your commercially zoned properties have to be over here. Your residential zoned properties have to be over here. Well, that kills it already, because now we can't put a grocery store close to a house.
True.
For your commercial properties, you have to have X amount of feet for parking. So now that gives you these big, giant parking lots that even if you could walk to the store, now you have to walk across the parking lot.
You ain't lying about that, because some of those, the way you ever walked the whole entire length of a Walmart parking lot,
right?
But with that being said, what I mean by them catering to the majority of people in this country do have a form of transportation of their own.
Because they have to.
True. And of course, let's toss a little bit of money to public transportation for these bums that don't want to go get a vehicle. And honestly, that's how I think that
and that's the wrong way to look at it.
Agreed.
Those should be looked at as the smarter people who are taking public transit, because there's not as much pollution by 12 people riding in one bus as there are 12 cars being out there.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So we equate bus riders with lower class people.
Well,
so that makes people not want to ride the bus now.
Exactly. It's a stigma. Come on now. Oh, you ride public transportation?
Yeah.
Like, honestly. But, you would think that, Democrats would be all over this. But again, a lot of this movement, you just saw a Democratic made bill. A lot of this movement is for people that are, owners of vehicles. The first thing that I saw that I had a major issue with was the clean energy part of it. Like, okay, sneak a little bit in there. Okay, cool. But we're talking more than the actual infrastructure amount in there for clean energy. And I remember we talked about this as well whenever they were coming up with the bill, that we were talking about the U.S. Postal Service and their need for new vehicles. And President Biden said, okay, I'll give you the new vehicles, but they all have to be green. Like, that's not how we do business here. In my mind, that's not how we do business here. You can't tell me that you're only going to give me a new Metro City bus to service these neighborhoods that aren't getting serviced very often, only if it's green energy. That's not how you do these things. That just causes the cost of the bill to skyrocket in my mind. And what are you really doing?
And I get that, but I think what you're failing to see is part of that clean energy stuff could be as simple as charging stations. What kind of charging stations are there for a cross-country trip right now?
I mean, there's not many, period.
So that is a giant infrastructure that will have to be built if they're really pushing for electric vehicles nationwide. You have to have as many charging stations as you have gas stations.
Do you think, though, that that's something? So I see where you equate it with infrastructure. I absolutely do. But do you think that's something you tackle all at once like they are?
Heck no. There is no way you can tackle it all at once, and it's never going to catch on, in my opinion, because of the way the charging is done right now. How long do you have to wait? You want to take 5 minutes to put gas in your car, or do you want to take 30 to 40 minutes, maybe even an hour to sit there while your vehicle charges?
Is that how it works? Because literally, I've never looked at how long it takes to charge a vehicle. Is it really like an hour that you're sitting at these spots?
It is, yes. It can be up to an hour for some vehicles.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, there needs to be a better way before we start pushing for every American to own one.
Agreed. And you know, I remember that was actually part of the topic whenever President Obama at the time pushed that, we're going to bail out GM, but so many of your cars need to become not electric, but at least a lot more fuel efficient by a certain point. And, you know, even though that was controversial, again, why isn't President Biden turning around and saying, okay, well, we want to push towards this electric energy. So, again, set a number. 20% of your brand new vehicle fleet every year by the year 2025 needs to be electric. You know, small bites.
Something that just hit me was I'm curious how much of that money that is being set for clean energy is a kickback to companies trying to develop newer battery technology and stuff like that.
It's a good point too. Where I completely jump off the train, though, is where I saw social programs getting billions of dollars in this infrastructure bill. So you've successfully equated just about everything in here to infrastructure. Where do social programs fit into infrastructure?
That one I honestly don't have an answer for. The one I had wrote down was affordable housing. They're wanting to throw money for affordable housing. I have said several times, my thought isn't that the government, which basically winds up being the taxpayers, need to pay housing costs.
Oh, completely agree.
For people. What we need to do, there was a time that you could buy a house and land cheaper than you could buy a car.
Really?
And it wasn't until they started buying it as an investment properties. It wasn't until they started buying investment properties that the cost of all that stuff started to go up. Once people saw that they could make money off of it, it became a burden.
Well, and I mean, again, it goes back to that same discussion we had last time we were on here, where we said, you know, hey, if they're willing to pay the prices, we aren't going to see them drop anytime soon.
Right.
You want to know how you fix housing costs? Fix inflation. That'll go a long way.
That's before I have said there ought to be a cap on what you can charge for rent if you own a house that you're renting out. Or maybe they need to charge more in taxes. Maybe that will lessen people buying a property just to rent it out.
And I mean, again, you see these, and again, you bring up investment properties, but you see these people who are like, okay, well, the big thing about real estate is, okay, I bought my house at X, but I'm going to sell it for X to make a profit. Everybody's always
That's the investment part of it. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that it shouldn't be that way.
As long as people are willing to pay the prices, it seems like it isn't going to change anytime soon. But definitely, I mean, fix inflation, and guess what? A lot of things are going to start going down. A lot of people are going to start seeing these things.
It's one thing if Johnny down the road, sees a bigger home and buys a bigger home and sells his smaller home to somebody else. That's one thing.
Right.
I can kind of see that, if he sells it for a little bit more because he did do some updates to it.
Right.
Okay. But when you have large companies buying blocks in mass number just to rent out, they're not even going to sell them. They're not worried about fixing them up. They're not worried about selling them.
Slumlords.
They purchase them just to rent out.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue, in my opinion, and caps should be put on that kind of stuff.
That's absolutely despicable. I completely agree with you. Okay, so this one is you. Speaking of green energy, this one you brought up. Lucid electric vehicles, I'm assuming that's what EVs are.
Yes.
Are on the rise, and TerraPower's first nuclear reactor. We actually have a story from Lucid Motors CEO. He's talking with Jim Cramer on CNBC television about Lucid.
But you have said, let's be clear about this, you have a lot of demand, up to 70,000, and that's not a problem for you to make. But you have dreams, let's hopefully realities, of 500,000 in production?
And more. Absolutely. Absolutely. We already have a factory scale for 34,000 units a year. As soon as we can get this quality parts to the line, we can spool that up. The factory is there and ready for 34,000 units per annum. We're quadrupling the size of that factory in Arizona. We're building out a 2.85 million square foot expansion to get ready to build 90,000 units per annum. And the site itself is, with its phase 3, capable of nearly 400,000 units per annum. And mid-decade, we plan to have plants in the Middle East and China as well.
Now, people tell me, wait, Jim, don't get too caught up in the Lucid, because the fact is it's such a crowded market. I look at the percentage of automobiles that are sold that are EV, and I say, well, that's really what we're talking about versus the rest.
I couldn't agree more. There isn't a market for EVs. There's a market for cars, Jim. And the penetration of EVs in that market is tiny, 2.5% to 4%. I'm looking at the other 96%. That's our market.
And a 30-year-old person who has some means or can borrow, do they want an internal combustion engine, or do they want this?
They want this. They want race-bred technology and performance. This is a luxury car, a mileage in Grand Touring, but it's a beast of a sports car as well.
Don't miss a second of Mad Money. Follow at...
So again, with these, electric vehicles, and we'll start there. Electric vehicles are becoming something that is going from a status symbol, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I look at it. They're becoming something. They're going from something as to what was a status symbol with the. And now, of course, I'm blanking on the name of them. It begins with the T. What? Teslas. With the Teslas, those were a status symbol. Oh, this is my $200,000 Tesla. It's all electric, so on and so forth. Now it's becoming kind of almost like, I see it following the same path as the regular automotive situation, and just about any other big invention, where it's slowly becoming more and more affordable. Do you think we are on a path within, I'll give you a 10-year range. Do you think we're on a path where in 10 years we'll see a majority of Americans driving electric vehicles?
No,
Really?
for the reasons that I pointed out earlier with the infrastructure bill. Until there is a nationwide infrastructure of charging stations and they figure out how to charge things quicker, the only people that are really going to benefit from electric vehicles are those people that stay close to home.
So my question would be then, and you heard the CEO right there talking to Jim Cramer saying he wants to increase his sales. Obviously, he wants to increase production and push more of these vehicles out. Obviously, Tesla looking to increase sales. They're sending out more economical versions of their vehicles. We're going to run into a problem here, are we not?
Increasing sales will be great because the more product you have out there, the cheaper you can make the rates. Okay, so that's a plus. The second thing is having different companies fighting over putting their vehicles out there. Now Lucid has a cheaper alternative than Tesla.
Right.
And Lucid, the reason I had put this up there saying that it's on the rise, the Lucid stocks have surpassed Ford.
Right.
Okay. So their sales are on the rise.
Right.
At a cheaper rate, which will cause Tesla to, if not lower the price of the cars they have now, at least make a cheaper option.
Which is interesting. But again, my question would be, where does the rise in electric vehicles meet the unfortunate, infrastructure problem that we have with these electric vehicles? And then people basically have vehicles just sitting in the garage, and now everybody's using public transportation, if that makes sense.
Right. I couldn't tell you where it is. I don't think it's going to happen in 10 years.
Okay.
That was the number you threw out, so that was the question I was answering. I don't see it happening in 10 years. I don't see the infrastructure for that kind of thing being up that quickly. It's something that's going to take a lot of money. It's something that's going to take a lot of time.
Right.
The fact that prices are coming down make it more likely to happen sooner rather than later. But in order to get, we're at a point where we can still buy vehicles for under $1,000 that will run and get you from point A to B. So whenever you start having some vehicles like that for your average everyday American to buy, it's still going to be looked at as an elite status thing.
Which, I mean, you're completely right. We're looking, under $1,000. I easily look at 10, 15 years down the road. Then that would be, because those would be about 10, 15-year-old vehicles that you would be looking at with those. The only
and
thing,
of course, the battery technology is another thing that could be a game changer too. They're starting to use different metals in batteries that are lasting a little bit longer and getting more use out of them. So that could be something that changes the game as well.
Right. And I mean, we haven't even brought up, obviously, we talk about Lucid, we talk about Tesla, who the majority of their portfolio is in electric vehicles. I think actually all of them in those two cases. But even, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure I've seen a Lincoln electric vehicle. I know I've seen Toyota electric vehicles. Nissan, I believe, has an electric vehicle. I'm not sure if Ford, Chevy, and GM have one yet, though.
Are you kidding me, Mike? Have you already forgot about the Chevy Bolt?
Oh, yeah, the Chevy. But that thing was a flop. Are they still making those?
I don't know if they're still making it or not, but it wasn't a flop. It was just at the beginning. And people weren't ready to pay that kind of money for a Chevy.
Right.
Okay. One of the good ingenuities that Chevy had that I think hurts Tesla is their batteries. Tesla has 3 large batteries that go across the vehicle. The Chevy Volt, if I'm not mistaken, had 6. It could be 8, but I think it had 6. But they were half the size. So if you had a bad cell in a battery, it was easier to change one of those out. I mean, it in my opinion was a better built car.
Okay.
I just think it was really ahead of its time.
Yeah, true. It's American though. Like, and I say that with a wink and a nod, but honestly, like I do believe vehicles at least are built better in America. We find
Right.
ways, as much as I hate to say it this way, we find shortcuts, and even though they're shortcuts, we still find ways to make it happen and make it work.
As far as Ford, I honestly don't remember a Ford electric vehicle.
I want to say they have partially electric vehicles, but I'm not sure if they're fully electric yet.
Right.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure the Yaris for Toyota is fully electric, and I know that the Nissan has the Leaf, which is fully electric.
Right. Weren't some of the what was the little Toyota cars started with a P?
Yaris?
No, Prism.
Maybe. I'm trying to think of a Toyota car that starts with a P. Hold on. Google.
Prius.
Oh yeah, I think those were they're hybrids. So
were all of them hybrids? I was thinking that some of them may have been all electric. I knew that they had hybrids. I know that's how they'd started out, but I thought some of them were actually built as pure electric.
I do not see anything saying that all electric. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, there is a 2022 that's all electric. You're right.
I was thinking there was, but I wasn't for sure.
Gotta love Google.
So I mean, the more that's out there, the better it is for pricing.
So I don't want to call them the little guys because, again, they're amongst the elite and the 1%ers, these Lucid drivers, or, well, not the Lucid drivers, but these Tesla drivers. If you're the little guy like Tesla and Lucid, compared to these giants like Toyota, Chevy, Ford, et cetera, getting into the full electric, are you kind of a little weary of that, or do you think that because they were the first that they will, they'll actually end up amongst the elite of the car manufacturers?
That one's hard to say. As long as they are building it and selling it as an elite status symbol, you're going to be paying those high prices for it. We need to get to the VW bug of the electric vehicle.
Oh man,
that was something that nobody saw coming, and when that cheap little car came out, it sold millions.
I could be wrong, but I believe they actually just stopped making the VW Bug.
I believe you're correct in that statement. I think they have stopped production on it. Like earlier this year, late last year.
Which I'm actually shocked that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm actually shocked that we haven't seen a Volkswagen electric vehicle yet.
Well, I am too, that Volkswagen had made one, but it was still one of those things that it just happened to come at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm waiting to see what manufacturer actually comes out with the electric vehicle that is cheap enough, that happens to come at the right time.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get to the second half of this segment here. The TerraPower, building their first nuclear reactor, and this is a pretty big deal. This was actually co-founded by Bill Gates, and we all know Bill Gates. He's a rather successful businessman in starting up Microsoft. What should we know here about TerraPower? Obviously, they're working. They're making some moves here with getting their first nuclear reactor set up.
Yes, it's a smaller reactor. It is designed to be cleaner, and the fact that you have a money man like Bill Gates behind it is pretty cool. They've already chosen their site. They're actually starting to get to work. I mean, It's been chosen to go into Wyoming. So I'm interested to see how well it does. Supposedly, it doesn't take the water cooling.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different substance. It keeps it cool, so you don't have as much issue. That was one of the problems that happened in Japan when they had their meltdown.
Right.
Was electricity being shut off caused water pumps to fail, resulting in the chambers not being cool,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore you had that partial meltdown. These new substances do not do that. You don't have to have the water cooling. It's a different cooling. So it is supposed to be safer. It is supposed to be cleaner, for that same reason, because you're not dealing with all this radioactive water that you've got to dump somewhere.
So here's my thing, and I'm reading this. Obviously, this is a big deal that they're testing this, but I want to pull this stat out that the article specifically mentions, and I remember thinking about this when I originally read it. So this is a big deal that they're doing this, but the plant is only supposed to supply a base load of 345 megawatts with the potential to expand its capacity to 500 megawatts. Now, what I'm saying, Bo, the reason why I'm bringing this up, for reference, a gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. A small town can operate on about 1 megawatt, according to Bill Gates. What I'm wondering is, how far are we away? We're at half the size of a small town being able to be powered by this. Number one, I haven't seen a number. How long has this project been going on? Because we're about half a small town now that they can power here in Wyoming. How long have they been at this? Like, is this a feasible solution within a reasonable amount of time, or I haven't seen a date that they started working on this project, so I do apologize. Oh, 20.
The group was organized in 1997.
So it was organized in 97. Let's just take that 97 date.
It aims to build the plant in the frontier area coal town by 2028.
Okay, so we're looking at 2028. That's roughly 30 years. We'll say 31 years since the original founding. So are we looking at 60 years before we're even at small towns? Because again, I know it's our job to make the world a better place for our grandkids and their grandkids and so on and so forth down the line. But why are we making such a big deal about this right now with it only being at such a small capacity? Is it just the excitement of, hey, we're this close to being, on a small town?
Yes, because it's a step. I mean, you never take that step, you're not going to go anywhere.
Very true.
It's got to start somewhere. The fact Bill Gates will possibly be dead before it's even completed is a fact. But you're looking at people that want to get their name out there, want to get their names in the papers. Hey, look what we did type thing. Hey, look what we started. You couldn't have got to that final product without these first steps. It's the egos. That's why it's being so heavily reported right now. The fact that they have chosen a site, again, that's another step. And we're not just talking about what we could do, we're actually making steps to doing it.
So, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom on this and, hey, we'll never see this come to pass, because another two numbers that were later mentioned kind of give me hope that we're not that far off. The United States, according to an estimate, would use 1,000 gigawatts, and the world only needs 5,000 gigawatts. So while it may seem like a long way away, do you think we're closer than what perception may be right now to possibly, expanding upon this and, eventually moving to something like this?
Well, with the cost of these reactors being cheaper than the large reactors that we're accustomed to seeing, yeah, I think we are closer. Okay. This is a proving ground. Once a standard nuclear reactor was introduced and shown to be able to power cities and countries, how quickly did they start being built
Mm-hmm.
nationwide? Well, worldwide, really.
Well, and
You had all kinds of countries that started building because there was a proven model.
Right. That is a good point. Once we get this first one on the board, what do you think if it is a success and Bill Gates and these individuals who are running this show that it can be successful? Do you think we are going to look at, the government getting behind this and possibly, looking to build more of these within a small amount of time to potentially look at, hey, 10 years from now, we could be, and I throw 10 years, a decade. 10 years from now, we could be running a small town on this, because the government sees that this first one works and, tries to throw, not all the eggs in the basket, but
right.
Some eggs in the basket. And
right, I do. Well, once we have the first one up and it's proven that, hey, it works great. Yes, I can definitely see the government get behind it. That's where you'll have your AOCs and people like that really push for it.
And the interesting thing about this is, as much as we all green energy and build back better and all that crap is kind of the bane of our existence on the right, because all you see is dollar signs when you talk about this. This is actually a cheaper alternative.
Yes.
To what we're currently running. I think that's how you sell it. Hey, this is
right.
a more economical, a more economical way to do this. It's going to save everybody in the long run. We're not spending as much money to build these reactors. And guess what? You get the tax break. Why are Republicans jumping on this, honestly?
Well, 13 of them did. Maybe that was a selling point for them.
Hey, there you go. Maybe that's why it's in Wyoming, which, let's be honest, is very, very red.
Right.
Okay. So here's my question for you, and you posted an article in the American Idiots chat. Why are Democrats being cautioned not to call enclosures at immigration checkpoints pages? And we do have a story here with Ted Cruz. He kind of blew up on the left as far as immigration goes. So we'll talk about this all when we get back.
We have a crisis raging on our southern border right now because of Joe Biden's lawless and open border policies. The head of the Biden Department of Homeland Security is informing its staff to prepare for up to 400,000 illegal immigrants crossing this month. And yet the Senate Judiciary Committee has not had a single hearing on the crisis on our southern border. Over 2 million illegal immigrants streaming into America. Democrats don't care. Hundreds of thousands of kids in cages. Democrats don't care. Every Democrat on this committee went on TV on and on about kids in cages, kids in cages. You now know what they were saying they didn't believe, because if they believed it, there are more kids in more cages that are more full now than there ever were, and not a Democrat on this committee cares. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants with COVID. Democrats don't care. Children by the thousands being physically and sexually abused by human traffickers. Democrats don't care. Drugs streaming across our border. Democrats don't care. Young women being trapped in sexual slavery by human traffickers. Democrats don't care. Well, what do they care about? Well, this illustrates what they care about. Democrats have one priority, and that is power, staying in power. That's why Democrats have had 4 hearings on amnesty. They look at 2 million illegal immigrants and they think, ooh, future Democratic voters, let's give them all amnesty. Never mind the abuses that happen. This is about power for our Democratic friends. But you know what? There's something they've had more hearings on than amnesty, and that is the federal takeover of election law and the Democratic power grab. There is nothing that is a higher priority for Democrats than staying in power. The Corrupt Politicians Act was so brazenly political. It was such a naked power grab. The Democrats have abandoned it where they realized they couldn't defend it with a straight face.
So I played that, and on the nose, obviously, it doesn't look like it plays any part in this, but I play that to kind of give you a preface to my argument. I think the Democrats are knowing that they bungled this situation. I think the Democrats know that it is getting worse under their administration, and now this is where we see the hypocrisy of politics, so to speak, in that, well, we can call them cages when it's under another administration, under a Republican administration, but under us, we got to downplay it. We got to downplay it, and it's enclosures or something that isn't as bad as cages. But, and I'm going to
the original video.
What?
The original video I had shared with you was Ted Cruz asking questions of who was the gentleman he was asking questions to?
Lord, you would ask me that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would, because I don't remember either.
I don't remember.
I mean, that's why I'm asking, because I don't remember. Anyways, it was a Democrat that he was asking these questions to, and when he started asking how many kids were in cages when you went down there, all the Democrat gentleman would say was, I don't know what you mean cages. What do you mean cages? So they even got to the point where they were showing a picture of what it is. And he said, you can call it whatever you want, but these are the kids in cages. Oh, I have to caution you I don't agree with you using that word cages. Well, every time Senator Cruz would say something and then attach the word cages, the Democrat would rebut him solely on the word cages. He wouldn't rebut him on, well, those aren't the conditions there anymore. Nothing else was false to this man's mind other than using the word cages.
Right. And, again, I'm going to choke on my words here, but it's hard to disagree with Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz is absolutely right. Again, what Democrats are doing since they have taken over the Oval Office and taken over the White House has not helped anything. It's made it worse. And even though it was a brazen political move for him to say, you don't care about immigrants, it's the truth. Nobody in that room, including Senator Cruz himself, in my opinion, care about any of these individuals at our southern border.
Right. You've got your Democrats, you have your media, you have everybody that was blowing this out of the water. It was on every channel you come across. It was on talk shows. It was on sitcoms. It was everywhere when a Republican was in office.
Exactly.
Nobody brings it up anymore.
And that really is the hypocrisy of all of this. They're using the term that it is a crisis at the southern border, and that's absolutely what it is. It's not, everybody wants to talk about the great humanitarians that these Democrats are, but let's be honest, Joe Biden is sitting over one of the worst humanitarian crises in our country's history, in my opinion. It's gotten that bad. Literally, you have people sleeping in some cases, when everything was going on in May and we were looking back on them then, me and you both looked at each other and we said, good Lord, it's worse now than seeing these pictures now than it was under President Trump.
Right. And that was one of the things that Senator Cruz was pointing out to the gentleman he was talking to, was that, y'all were saying that it was bad back then, but y'all haven't done anything to fix the problem now.
And literally, President Biden was, thank you, President Biden, for opening the border. You're such a great human being. But what has that built? Everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe the Republicans are, while I disagree with some things Republicans say as far as immigration goes, I also disagree with some things as far as Democrats go. You know what we've seen since President Biden came into office? We've seen something that the infrastructure of our immigration system could not maintain. They are overwhelmed and they cannot continue. And that is why these situations and these issues at our southern border are getting worse by the day, is because they are overwhelmed. At this point, you do. I mean, hell, if you want to save face and call it, hey, we're closing it because of this Omicron virus, this new Omicron variant, that, go for it. But at this point, honestly, close the border for 30 days. And I'm sure we'll see a little bit of help here. Like, you need to look at closing that border before, it gets worse and worse. Where are we going to put people? At this point, we have nowhere to put people in cages. And what's next is things worse than cages. We're not giving them more money to build better things. We're saying, hey, we want you to pull some shit out your ass at this point. And that's where I am. I mean, Ted Cruz is right when he pointed at each of them and said, there is not a Democrat in this room that cares about immigration and the immigrants at the southern border. I completely agree with that.
Yep. And I don't have a whole lot to add to it. I feel the exact same way. Yeah.
I may have went on a little bit of a sermon there. But I mean, do you agree? Do you think it is a problem with the infrastructure collapsing of the immigration system in our country? Because
I think there's been a problem with it for a long time, and Biden saying, hey, doors open, didn't help.
Absolutely.
I think I heard last week that there's another caravan that is on the move, heading north.
And what are we going to do? They're not going to get free pass into this country. There is no law right now on the books that say they get free pass into this country. So guess what? They're going to be 400,000 more. Where are we going to put them?
Right.
They're going to be sleeping in the mud. And I don't mean to laugh. Like, literally, you laugh or you cry at this point, because you're thinking about little 2-year-old kids sleeping in the dirt because we don't have a spot to put them. That's where we are.
And I mean, we don't have a spot to put them, yes, but I mean, their parents are the ones that are uprooting the family to travel. For what reason?
Absolutely agree with that too. Absolutely. And I mean, even if we did say, hey, y'all, come on in, we're gonna put a law in the books that says everybody come on in, where are we gonna put them still?
Right. When they get here, where are they gonna live?
I mean, Democrats will talk out of both sides of their mouth. Oh, we're ruining the rainforest, but guess what? We're ruining the rainforest. I use an example that's all the way down in South America, but we're ruining this little bug whose endangered habitat. But guess what we're ruining it for? More houses, because we have more people, and you want to add 400,000 more people. Like, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth and not get called out for it.
Right.
Okay. So we don't have a video for our next topic, but at least 10 Republicans who won election this year were present at the rally before the January 6th Capitol riots. And I want to make sure I understand this correctly, because I read the story and I want to make sure I do have a good grasp on this before I comment. What it's saying is that it was at the rally that Trump was present at, correct? They didn't go to the Capitol. This
correct.
Isn't like active rioters that are being elected.
Correct.
Okay. Again, this is another interesting thing that I think Democrats need to look at strategically. Kind of like we looked at Youngkin in Virginia getting elected. Strategically, Democrats have to look at this as a giant L. What they're using right now is not working. I'm going to throw another stat at you that I found out last night. Currently, and I realize we're 3 years ahead of schedule here looking at these, and I don't know why the hell there's even polls yet, but currently, Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in a fictitious presidential election by 10 percentage points. Joe Biden won the presidency by 8 percentage points in the popular vote.
Right.
Things could not, if you're not hitting the panic button in the Democratic Party, you've lost your mind. Am I right?
Yeah, you definitely are.
So literally, the scary thing though is I counteract the 10 Republicans who won election with the fact that you brought this up and you shared the story. There are no elected Republican officials on the West Coast right now in any position, obviously, that holds any key position. It's like we're living in two different countries. We're living in the South. We're living in the Northeast. The Midwest is kind of flip floppy between Republicans and Democrats. They're probably the most moderate of the areas here in the country. And then you have the West Coast that is just off in Democrat land. Like even
Texas is kind of its own thing too.
Even us in Ruby Red, Arkansas, or hell, Texas for that matter, have democratically elected officials or Democrat elected officials. What is going on the West Coast? Like, are they just crazy? Like, do you not care about having a check and balance?
Well, I mean, you have to look at the people who are running things.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are voting are primarily left wing,
Mm-hmm.
want it their way type people.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get that, then I mean, of course, anybody appointed to any position is going to be of the same way.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And again, the fact that no Republican in that whole, you're talking about the biggest state in the union, California. No Republican in California holds a office of any consequence. Like, wow.
Washington, Oregon.
30 years ago, Ronald Reagan was the governor of that. Hell, 10 years ago, I could have my math wrong on that. 10 years ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of the state of California. And he's more of a moderate, but he was a Republican.
Right.
Like, where I feel like the divisiveness has gotten so bad that we are literally living in different countries based upon what part of the U.S. we live in. And that's not good for the overall look of the U.S., correct? I mean, Abraham Lincoln, divided we fall. I mean, that's where we are. We're very divided.
And that's, you brought up the real issue with it is everything is going to be one-sided in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have another voice.
Absolutely. I mean,
so any chance of getting it changed is really out the window.
You look at it, and hell, we all are like, holy shit, when Republicans or Democrats control both chambers. But this is like absolutely max level of one party dominating an area of the country. And again, it's like something we've never seen before. Whether Georgia flipped Democratic or not in the last election, again, I was telling you about these polls I saw on 538.com. Donald Trump is currently leading Joe Biden in Georgia amongst likely voters by 12 percentage points, excuse me. Number one, Democrats need to be hitting the panic button and rethinking their thoughts. Number two, I do completely agree, especially Democrats were handed I feel like they were handed a gift in 2020. And what I mean by that is Democrats were handed basically the reins to the country, just like Republicans were in 2016, you could argue. But Democrats were basically handed the reins to the country and said, here, govern. May not have been a mandate, but they were like, here, govern. And because of this division within the Democratic Party, it's keeping them from governing effectively, because you have people like the Squad and so on and so forth that are just so extremely left-wing that nothing could get done. And again, you're looking at a spot where you get no opposition in the West Coast. I don't know how to explain this, Mandy, besides that this is terrible for America.
I believe it is too. Hopefully, there aren't more areas that do this kind of thing. That would really be scary.
And I mean, to be fair, and I think Manny will agree with me, so I'm going to lump him in there. We would be saying the same thing if we were in the South and there were no Democratic officials here in the South. It's dangerous. It's crazy.
Right. Like you pointed out, you've got to have checks and balances in place. And if everybody is along the same mindset, that's the only voice you're going to hear.
Exactly. And again, it just speaks to the inability to have bipartisanship in this country. And that's a problem and something we need to get back to. Okay, Manny, we kind of buried the lead. This one's pretty important, but the new COVID variant. And we have a story from the Wall Street Journal on Omicron. I'm assuming that's how you say it.
Omicron.
Omicron?
Yes.
Thank you for correcting me, because I've been saying Omicron all day.
This is what the virus causing COVID-19 looked like when it was first detected in Wuhan, China. Now scientists have identified a new variant called Omicron. It has 30 mutations affecting these spike proteins, which the virus uses to attach itself to human cells to infect them.
This is a clarion call as far as I'm concerned.
It does appear that Omicron spreads very rapidly and can be spread between people who are double vaccinated.
Scientists in South Africa first sounded the alarm over the variant.
As people start to move even more over the next few weeks, this will be all over.
It has been detected in a growing number of locations around the world, prompting governments, including the US, to restrict travel from Southern Africa and Israel to ban entry to all foreign nationals.
It's too early to know how concerned we should be about this, but there are enough signals that this is something that's important, that needs to be investigated.
The variant was declared a variant of concern by the World Health Organization. The agency said there could be an increased risk of COVID-19 reinfection with Omicron compared to other variants, and authorities say it could be more transmissible. A number of cases have been linked to South Africa, where scientists believe it could have caused a spike in infections. The number of infections detected per day rose sharply to nearly 3,000 cases on Sunday, from roughly 200 cases just 2 weeks earlier.
This new variant has more than 50 mutations. More than 30 of them are in the spike protein, which is the part through which the virus latches onto the human cell. And while there's a lot of mutations that we've never seen, there's a bunch that in previous variants have shown to make the variant either more contagious or allow it to evade parts of the immune response that was triggered by a vaccine or by a past infection.
The Omicron variant has twice as many mutations as the Delta variant, a highly contagious strain that was identified in India October of last year and became the dominant form of the virus around the world. Now scientists are racing to investigate how widespread the Omicron variant could be.
It's hard to know exactly how much it's spread. Most cases don't get diagnosed, and an even fewer number get sequenced. So whatever number of cases are officially reported, or whatever number of countries that have officially reported cases, that is likely an underestimate with an efficiently spreading respiratory virus. So I suspect you'll find more cases in more countries.
Pfizer, Moderna, and other vaccine makers have said they have plans in place to adapt their vaccines following the emergence of Omicron. BioNTech, which developed one of the most commonly used COVID-19 vaccines together with Pfizer, said they expect to be able to tweak their vaccine in around 100 days if needed.
When it comes to variants, when they possess certain mutations that have already been associated with certain changes in the behavior of the virus, like the ability to evade vaccines or monoclonal antibodies or prior immunity, or the ability to transmit more efficiently, those have to be taken seriously and have to be investigated, because it may change how we need to respond to or think about the virus and the trajectory of the pandemic.
Scientists have also warned for months that the risk of new variants is higher where vaccination rates are lower, especially in areas with people who are immunocompromised. In South Africa, only about 1/4 of the population is fully vaccinated. It's nearly 60% in the US.
This, I think, is not a coincidence that it arose or was detected in a place with a low vaccination level, which tells us that the more vaccination we get into people, the higher the vaccination numbers are, the more resilient we're going to be to variants like this.
And of course, again, thank you to the Wall Street Journal for that story. But one thing I want to ask, and literally this is the whole question that's running through my mind when I'm watching that. You said at the beginning of the video that at the beginning of the clip, that this strain of COVID was potentially, I don't think they've found 100% if it's true yet, but potentially immune to vaccinated individuals. But then you spend 30 seconds.
I believe they said that even double vaccinated people were getting it.
Right. But then the last 30 seconds you say it's because people
low vaccine numbers. Yeah. Low vaccine numbers equal high mutation rates. Well, wait a minute.
I don't have
if vaccinated people are still getting it. Yeah.
I mean, remember when MRSA developed, everybody was like, okay, this is because we use too much hand sanitizer and these things develop.
Right.
We did too much here. And I'm not going to say we did too much, but, we took some extreme precautions. Things happen when you take extreme precautions. I think this is the chickens coming home to roost as far as that goes. You should know, and I think everybody should know this. Eventually something's going to develop. I mean, not to use a line from Jurassic Park, but life finds a way.
Right. You got to remember, before smallpox, there wasn't smallpox. Before measles, before mumps, before rubella. I mean, there was a time that those things didn't exist, and then all of a sudden they did.
And
so it's to think that just stops is a little bit crazy.
Here's what's confusing to me is people are like, wow, it's mutated and it's more effective than the the vaccine. I'm going to bring this up and correct me if I'm wrong, but why do you think we need a brand new flu shot every year? Because the previous year is immune to because the previous year's vaccine.
Mutation. Yes.
The
mutation of the flu is
Is this
started in the vaccine?
Is this a big deal? Probably. Does it mean that the world's coming to an end because all of a sudden we found a strain that's immune to our double vaccine? No, it means we need to build another vaccine. This is, again, just like the flu, like we've been saying for years and for years at this point. We're going to need something new every year to inoculate us because it's going to keep developing. It's never going away, people. Don't freak out when something new comes along. Will this become the dominant?
That's what they keep doing. Originally, when I had put the story in here, was 2 weeks ago, the way I had worded it was in question form. Is the new virus really that bad, or are see if I still got it written down the way I did. I do. Is the new COVID variant, is there a new COVID variant, or are the Waymakers using scare tactics?
I remember seeing that. Yes, I remember seeing
that. That was the way I worded it originally, because at that time, they were talking about the new, NU. What I started to say before you clicked to the video was you need to learn your Greek alphabet, okay?
Okay.
That's what they have been naming these things after. They get a number assigned to them, and once they figure out, okay, this is a true variant, they give it a name, and right now they're naming them the Greek letters.
Right.
So we were at Delta, and then we didn't hear anything until the Lambda variant
I remember
started coming out. So all of those other letters in between Delta and Lambda had developed, but they were weak. They really didn't infect people in large capacity. Apparently, and I don't know what the M is in the Greek alphabet. Apparently, that one wasn't that big of a deal either, but NU was. So that was the one I was talking about.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
They started talking about, there's this new variant. And I was like, a new variant? Well, what is it called? And then I remembered new is NU for the Greek alphabet. So as I started reading it, and I would see NU as in new and hear new, and it's two different spellings. They weren't just saying a new variant; they were already naming it new.
Right.
So that's the one I was talking about, because they're trying to raise the alarm again. Hey, we just found this new variant. We got to watch out.
Well,
and that's why I was saying, are they falsely waving the flag? But now apparently they were, because you're not hearing about new anymore. Now it's Omicron.
Yeah, and obviously that was a bunch of smoke and mirrors. Now we're talking about Omicron, and Omicron is supposedly going to take over Delta as the dominant variant. Here's the thing: when we heard about Delta, were they like, oh my God, this is bad, oh my God, get vaccinated as soon as possible? Absolutely. But that probably fell off, I'm going to be generous and say a month after we first started really hearing about Delta. And now this Omicron, this Omicron is, I have a feeling, it's definitely going to be a dominant variant of this COVID-19 virus, because again, you hit the nail on the head, Prime Minister Boris Yeltsin. If you're double vaccinated, it can still affect you.
Right.
I have not, though, even though I've heard about the infectivity rate. Is it like Delta, where it's highly infective and also is killing people, or is it one that is highly infective but it's mild? I haven't heard that yet. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not.
That's what I'm interested in. Like, again, Lord forgive me, I can catch COVID again as long as it's not that bad. I mean, honestly, that's where I am with that. But again, people should not be freaking out, changing their life because they found a new variant and it happens to be immune to, basically at this point, a year-old vaccine. I mean, I think we started vaccinating healthcare workers a year ago. I'm pretty sure it was before Biden got into office.
And there have been several. I mean, according to this, I just looked up Greek alphabet, and I should have known that the M in the Greek alphabet is mu. Laugh at me all you want. The knowledge of my Greek alphabet is mainly from Revenge of the Nerds.
Ah, got you.
The Omega Moos. I should have known. But yeah, so apparently the Mu variant wasn't really that big. Then we have Nu, then XI, which is key, Omicron, and then Pi.
Oh,
exactly.
We're going to get a Pi variant. Woohoo!
Yes, I mean, at the rate we're going, yes, we are.
I mean, we may not hear about it because it seems like we're hearing about every fourth or fifth generation. But
well, I mean, there was a lot. Okay, it's Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. So we heard about COVID, which I'm assuming they were looking at as Alpha, and then we started hearing a lot about the Delta variant. Then it's Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, and then Lambda. So there was a whole lot of different variants that weren't very strong.
Right.
Or that Lambda came along and then moved Nu, Key, and Omicron. So I guess it's just the luck of the draw on which ones happen to get named and how bad they are.
Yeah, true. Okay. again, overwhelming opinion on this side of the panel. Don't freak out. Calm your ass down. We're going to develop another vaccine. It'll be effective. And then in a year, we're going to have another variant that we're going to have to fucking vaccinate again.
And we are by no means trying to, sidestep the fact that people are dying from
absolutely
from this virus. Not trying to sound cold, but people die every day from something.
Yes, exactly. I mean, people die of colds every day.
Right. Freaking out and making yourself a recluse, I don't think is the answer.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, we don't do this very often on this show, but I will give credit where credit's due. Joe Biden did the right thing today, coming out and saying, "Hey, y'all, we're not going to shut down. Calm the hell down."
Yeah.
He give credit where credit's due.
Didn't he do away with the mask mandate?
He actually, I think he did. Yes, he got rid of the mask mandate, and his vaccine mandate is in dire trouble, which we all expected. I mean, well, what are you thinking? Arkansas is actually one of the states, I believe there's 10, where a federal judge actually blocked the mask mandate for healthcare workers as well. Again, healthcare workers, I look at as a different situation because you're around it every day. Your likelihood is basically that of an immunocompromised person. So should you take extra steps? Yes, absolutely. But, that's neither here nor there. But again, I definitely think he did a hell of a job today, and we don't give him praise like that very often. Okay, my American Idiot of the Week this week is going to be all these motherfuckers that are literally comparing the Ahmaud Arbery verdict to that of Kyle Rittenhouse. Again, I think that's probably the stupidest comparison you can make. I think you're grasping at straws, and you probably just need to shut the hell up and get out of these conversations if you think that there is a connection between the two. Manny, I'll let you go.
Actually, I'd like to ask you about last week's. What was yours last week?
Who I think it was going to be Joe. I think it was going to be Joe again. I forget for what, but Joe did something that I was pretty peeved about last week.
Right. Well, last week, mine was Gary Maynard of San Jose. He was arrested and charged with 4 counts of arson to federal property. They found out that he was setting fires after firefighters had gone in fighting fires that were already there. In essence, trying to trap them inside of a fire.
Oh my! Okay.
So that's pretty stupid.
Oh wait, hold on. Had they left and he set the fire again?
No. They were in there fighting the fire, and he lit it behind them.
This motherfucker.
Yeah.
That is ballsy as shit.
Yes, it is. So that was last week.
Firefighters didn't turn around and beat his ass. Saying, if I'm a firefighter with all this shit on and you're undoing everything I just did, I'm pulling that big ass oxygen tank off and I'm hitting a home run with your skull, bro.
I mean, it's not even undoing what you've just done. He put them in danger.
Right. True.
He basically trapped them inside of a fire.
He could have killed them.
Yes. So yeah, that is a big deal. I would almost, 4 counts of arson is bad, but I mean, I think I would push for an attempted murder charge.
Yeah.
Or however many firefighters was in there, that many charges.
Yeah, I agreed there.
So, this week, I actually heard a story over the weekend, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Oh. These people who believe that Joe Biden getting them to stamp a $1 trillion coin is going to fix our debt ceiling.
What?
Have you heard about this?
No.
There are people that believe if Joe Biden gives the word and they mint $1 trillion coin, they can use that as payment for exactly. They can use that as payment for some of our deficit to help our deficit ceiling so that we don't overspend. What they want to do, because they can only print so much currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they're wanting to do is stamp it out of platinum because there's no rules on platinum. So we are supposed to pretend that this coin that is just stamped, nothing backing it, is all of a sudden $1 trillion
It's
coin.
Wow.
At that point, why don't we just make 1 million of those $1 trillion coins and go ahead and go buy some countries?
So I thought you set the bar impossibly high when you said the stupidest thing you ever heard. But you really did just jump over that sumbitch. Holy crap.
This is what's being proposed, and they really think it'll work.
Oh.
So yes, all these people that are proposing this, those are my American idiots of the week.
Rightfully so.
Hold on. Let me get back to this page.
Oh my goodness.
I'm about to shock you with this, okay?
Okay. Are you sending it to me in the chat?
No. I'm just pulling it up so I can read it.
Okay.
$1 trillion coin is a concept that emerged during the United States debt ceiling crisis of, you ready for this? 2011. This isn't a new concept, but they have rehashed it now because we are close to overspending on our debt ceiling.
Oh my.
So there's a lot of people for a long time that have thought just print more money will fix the problem.
Hey, I mean, I'm not shocked that they're Democrats again. Throw money at the problem. Just throw money at the $1 trillion coin, and it's got to be platinum because there's no rules. God.
Yes, yeah, that's the key to it right there. Because the Treasury Department can only print so much currency.
Oh my goodness, I am at a loss for words with the stupidity in that story, but that pretty much does it for us, Manny. Is there anything else you wanted to go over before we get out of here?
Nope, I think we're good.
Right.
I'm gonna go draw some dollar bills or something.
Hey, if you find one of them $1 trillion coins, I'm just saying, send it this way. I'm just saying. But ladies and gentlemen, for the Manic Hispanic, I am Money Mike. We will see you guys next week. Good night, everybody.